What up, brothers? It's the Clipper King returning for a 3-in-1 review today on the figures that have been kindly lent to me by Tareek Harmond. Massive shout out to him. He's very active in my Facebook group and he's done me a really good deed. He sold me a figure earlier this week and he included 5 other figures with a massive value, if I'm honest, for me to have a look at, review, and then I'm hoping to sell them on his behalf. I will say I wanted to check these figures out a while ago, but the pictures when they first came out put me off a little bit, so I'm going to get the chance to have a good look at them myself and also give you guys an honest opinion on the figures that he sent me. And you're probably thinking, why is he prolonging his shot on the Goodfellas Blu-ray? That's because the simple reason is that's the figures I'm going to be reviewing. I will start off by making it clear there's no conflict of interest here. I am going to review these figures up honestly and fairly, even if that means that there's a sale to be made or not. I'm not going to overhype the figures so that he can make the sale. I've told him that from the start, so I'm going to review them, give you all the strong points, the weak points, and just tell you my overall thoughts on if I were buying these figures or if I decided to keep these figures myself, what I would be looking to change on them. I will also say, if you're sitting tight and thinking, oh, in a minute Rick's going to mention guy who runs this company or even the company's name, you'd be wrong. I've wasted too much time on them before, so like I said in the unboxing, no free advertising anymore. The reviews get seen by more people than they make figures from, so it's just a waste of my time. So I won't be mentioning that company. Anybody with any knowledge will know the company that makes these figures, and like I said, they will get a pat on the back for the strong points, but also I know they don't like criticism, so they might get a little bit butter about any negative points I make. And I would also like to make it clear, it's a massive honour to be able to review figures from this film. This is one of my top 5 films of all time, so it is nice to finally get to see something from a licence that I would really want. The Marvel stuff's okay and the DC stuff's okay, but it's got a very short shelf life. You can see that if you look at the sale threads on any groups, people are pretty much catch and release. They buy them 1 month, sell them the next, and I've been guilty of that myself. Something like this, if I would have bought it, it would have pretty much been a keeper like my Godfather and Carlito and Scarface figures have been. So let's make an introduction. Who are we looking at? It's the main 3 protagonists from Goodfellas. So it's Robert De Niro as Jimmy. Just looking down that. Moving across onto one shoulder. We've got Tommy, played by Joe Pesci. And then on the other shoulder, we've got Ray Liotta playing Henry Hill. Like I've said before, a lot of videos and a lot of people will know I do love the gangster films, and this is definitely one of the best. If I would have been scoring source material, I would have given them all an easy 5 out of 5, but I don't do that anymore, but I will be scoring every other category. So let's crack on and talk about the packaging. Right, so as we've seen before, we're just talking about a flat black box with a magnet side, sort of the wrap round design. As you open that, just lay it back. As you open that, you see the foam inlay tray with a foam cover. You can remove that, and then you get the cutaway down the centre for the figure, and then the 2 slits down either side, which just sort of house the Ziploc bags that hold the various accessories that each figure brings. That is sort of a bubble wrap hood that goes onto the head sculpt, so obviously the foam doesn't rub against the paintwork, which is a nice touch, I will say. And then on this particular figure, you do get the sort of trio postcard, and then you do get the certificate of authenticity. This one, as you see, it's number 22 of 40, so it just shows that there's not many of the full set made. As I've said before with the boxers, it is decent quality card, artwork is non-existent, it's functional as in it will hold the figure in place, but again, we used to seeing Hot Toys and Damn Toys and Enter Bay all have the cutaway sections in the box to house each accessory. These don't have them. Now, it is what it is. Pretty much most custom figures come in a box like this. Some don't mind because they're not into the boxes. I personally do like a decent box because it's sort of points to where your money is going to. So as I've scored these figures before, it's hard to get sort of enthusiastic about it, so I can only give the packaging a 1 out of 5. Right, so now we'll split the figures up and talk about the likeness. I will keep moving just so that you can see the dimensions on the face and also the various angles, which give you a better look, I always think, than just looking at photos. Now I started with Robert De Niro as Jimmy Burke, or Jimmy Conway as he's known in the film. The real character's name's Jimmy Burke. And I'll start off by saying, I knew these figures were going into production a long time before we actually saw the pictures coming out. They were sort of planned, and they were kind of a vote asking for figures from certain films. Now, I will give credit to this company, although it sort of pains me at times. They do think outside the box as far as licenses go. They will go and tackle a license such as Goodfellas, or The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or Pulp Fiction, to name a few. Whereas the major companies, and I'm thinking Hot Toys and Enterbay, they pretty much play it safe. Every now and again we'll see sort of a rogue figure what comes from a line that we're either really pestering for, and I'm thinking of something like a Marty McFly or maybe a Robocop, but all in all they do play it safe to generate the money, and understandably so. But like I said, this company will sort of try their hand, do a small run on figures. Now the heartbreaking thing for it is they normally come from figures I really like, which pains me because not only can I not afford to be collecting figures at this range, I also don't really want to support that company. So it's a funny one for me. I've sort of got to bite the hand that feeds and not have this figure in my collection with my other gangsters just because I won't spend my money with them. So it is a bit of a sad state of affairs, really. But anyway, when I did see the production photos, because I'm pretty much on a downer with this company, I looked at them. I looked at all three and I thought Ray Liotta looks pretty good, Robert De Niro's a mile off, and Joe Pesci's just fucking, I don't know. I just don't see it at all. I will say this is the one that has actually surprised me the most, because on the photos, the expression just looked off. It just never looked like him. It always seemed to have the bad lighting on it, and I don't know, I was a little bit gutted because this is the one I wanted to be the best. I'm a massive fan of Robert De Niro, he's my favourite actor by miles, and I just like a really good representation. Now, when you get this figure in hand, well, I'll speak for myself, I'll not speak for you guys. I realised that I was pretty wrong about it. Photos really don't do it justice. If you get it in hand, you can move around it, so the lighting moves across his face. I think it is pretty much dead on for a Robert De Niro at this age. So we're talking sort of 89, 90. I think they've really captured it well. I think the eyes are awesome. The mole sort of on his right cheek, as you can see there. And then one on the forehead just below his hairline. The eyes nice and glossy. The shape of the nose is dead on. The only thing that throws it off a little bit is if you see the production shots, and I'm thinking about on the cover of the film, his pose is slightly mouth open. They've gone for mouth closed on this, so it does look a little bit off to the DVD cover, but I think if you check the scenes in the film, you'll realise the likeness is really strong. So I will say that. We'll move on. In fact, before that, I'll score them individually. So, from the pictures, I'm going to score this a 3. I'll be honest. I'm going to give Tommy a 2. I'm going to give this a 3. And I'm going to give Ray Liotta a 4 out of 5. On this one, I was pleasantly surprised. And before I move on to the others, I'll show you something else. I'm going to give this likeness a 5 out of 5. And people are going to say, well, I don't see it. To them, I would say, you really need to see it in hand. I think the camera's doing it justice from the viewfinder. But in hand, it is really good. So like I said, on this figure, I'm going to give the likeness a 5 out of 5. I just want to show something else before I move on. Anybody who saw the unboxing that I did overnight, you'll realise I also got sent the Young Vito figure from the same company by the same guy, Tareek Harmond. And I just want to say that this one also pleasantly surprised me, because I've been back and I've checked the film. I've also checked films around this time, so sort of mid-70s, let's call it, or early to mid-70s. Robert De Niro at this age. I think the sculpt on this one is probably 100% accurate. Now, saying that, if I move around it, I just want to give you a good look, and the light's not on this one quite as well as on the other one. But at that age, like I say, I think it's nearly dead on accurate, the sculpt. Now, the pity is with that one is the Vito is the better sculpt, but the Jimmy figure is the better paintwork. So you've got De Niro at two different ages, both really good and do display really well, I'll be honest. But the sculpt is better on this one, yet the paint is stronger on this one. But either way, two very good likenesses and both definitely better in hand. So next, I'll move on to Henry. So here we have Henry Hill, played obviously by Ray Liotta. I'll go back to what I was saying. From the early production pictures and the release pictures, I thought this one was the best by miles. Now, I still think it is the most accurate. I do stick to that. I'll just also show you air, because of the styling is really fine through the air. So that's a really good job. And I will also say, if you look through the scenes in the film, you realise it is really accurate. And I don't think there'd be many people who would mark this figure down. Now, it sort of comes from the early section of the film. So I'm talking probably up to, let me think, around where he beats the guy with the revolver pistol, around that sort of time in film. So not really towards the back end of the film where he's really strung out and he's doing coke and this and other. So it's that part of the film. I will also say as well, the more I've looked at screenshots from the production photos and on the DVD cover or Blu-ray cover, you realise his face is a little bit more sunk than they've done on this sculpt. So there is that. Some pictures you can compare it against, it looks a little bit too full-faced, but if you take the film as a whole, like I said, around that sort of first hour at film mark, I'm thinking, where it's really clean cut, it is really, really accurate. I think the eyes are stunning. Like I said, the work on the hair is amazing. The skin tone's really, really good. And I've not seen many people slag this sculpt off, and that is understandable. Most people, even from pictures, would say this is the most accurate. I know I'm going to score it high. Again, in hand, it's slightly better than you would expect. And I am going to score it, again, quite an easy 5 out of 5. Right, and lastly, moving on to Tommy. Joe Pesci, or Tommy DeSimone, is the real character's name. Now, from the production shots and the release photos, I thought this one were a million mile off. I saw somebody say it looked like Sting, and I thought, I agree. The pictures made the hair look too brown, and again, it's not as brown as it looks in the pictures, although it is a little bit too brown for my taste. So one of the things on this figure that I definitely would change if it was mine is, I would take a black acrylic, I'll get my words out, a black acrylic paint and do some sort of black wash technique and let some of the black sit in the recesses of the hair. The sculpt on the hair is pretty much amazing, even down to the sort of harsh cutaway. If you see in the film, it sort of gives the wig effect because he doesn't have, you can't sort of see his neck hair. So that's been sculpted really well. Again, the fine lines through the hair, job well done. And coming back round, I'll turn it so you get it from every angle. Now, there's a couple of things that throws this off for me, and I think it is mainly down to the eye position. So what we'll do is, we'll look at it from front, and sometimes as you're turning around it, it looks like it's slightly cockeyed. but when you get to where the eyes are facing you, it does have a really nice look about it. The eyes again have got really good depth. He has got the sort of the pronounced cheekbone here, and then sort of the, I don't know, the setback jawline, I suppose. Also, the tip of the nose looks very much like a bell end. I'm not sure if that word translates to every nationality, so I'll also say it looks like a cock nose. So yeah, you see the sort of dimple on the nose. But I will say, and this is serious because a lot of people have said it's a mile off, it's not as far off as I thought it were. In hand again, it really, really does stand out. Now, again, watch certain scenes from the film, and it looks a lot closer than you remember it to. So yeah, I think the shape of the mouth is pretty much dead on, and like I said, the tip of the nose is good. It just loses something somewhere, and I personally think that darkening the hair would help, and also slightly darker around the eyebrows. But I will say the paintwork is awesome, and the skin texture is really good as well. This is the one that I would say it all depends how you pose it, because you could put it in a pose and you could kill the likeness totally. If you start thinking about your pose or how you place him compared to the others, then you're going to get a better likeness from him. So, like I said, when I saw the production shots, I'm going to give it a 1 or 2 out of 5. In hand, it's not as good as the other two, so I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you it is, but I'm actually going to give it a 3.5. I was so torn between giving it a 3 or a 4. I'm thinking it's probably not quite strong enough to be a 4, but it's definitely better than an average 3. So that's what I'm going to give it. So I just want to give you a good look around it, so that you do get sort of the 3D style image of the sculpt. So I'll get them all back in and we'll talk about the outfits. Right, so rolling on to another strong category, the outfits. I will say they're all strong in the same places and they're all weak in another place. So they can't get the perfect score, but let's talk about them. We'll start off again with Robert De Niro. Now, one thing I will point out before I even talk about the outfits on these, I've seen quite a lot of pictures of these figures recently to sort of build up some knowledge for this review, and also people have been selling them. I've seen 2 sets of this being sold through my group, and when it comes up, I'm always one of them, I think, I wish it were about 200-300 quid cheaper, because then I'd be interested myself. And when I see the pictures, there's always a couple of things that stand out to me. One of them I'll cover when we get to bodies. The other thing I'm going to mention now. You look back at some of the pictures before I put some pictures on other day, and you always get the appearance of giraffe neck on at least one of them. Now, it's normally De Niro or Joe Pesci. And what it is because if you push the suit right down as it sits, look at that, it comes across giraffe necked. So a tip for anybody who were to buy these figures, or anybody who's got these figures and has them, either change the bodies altogether, or at least just sort of puff the shoulder of the jacket up. Not so much the shirt, because the shirt sits in the right place, but if you could put some padding underneath the shoulder of the jacket, and move away again, and it gives sort of, it shortens the neck because you're bringing the shoulders up in effect. Again, sometimes on this one it's not too much, but when I've posed it, I do sort of push, sort of lift the jacket slightly, just so that the head sits in a more natural position. Again, I've already done it with this one, but that is what I would recommend. So let's talk about the cut and the fabric. Again, we'll start with Jimmy. I'll start off by saying, and this is probably no surprise to you at all, although it might be a surprise to one person who said on the Facebook group of a day, the suits look cheap. They couldn't be further away from the truth. The suits are as good, if not better, than any suits I've seen from Hot Toys. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, so they should be, because they've done a smaller run of them, so they can, the tailoring should be perfect, the fabric should be perfect, and it pretty much is. I've got to be honest. If I show you the trousers here, you can see how it catches the light. it very much feels like a real silk suit to me. The Wolverine, the funeral suit for the Wolverine figure, will probably one of the best suits that I've seen on a figure. This is better than it. It just, I don't know, I suppose it's the difference between custom work and mass produced. They do use the same style poppers, and it only pops there on the De Niro. It does have a type in there, as you can see. The off-white tie with the white shirt. I will also show that every one of them does have a set of cufflinks. I can't really show it. I'll show it in another pose. They do all have a set of like bejeweled cufflinks, which do look nice. Faux leather belt, and really, really well done. So, awesome suit. Moving across to Ray Liotta. Again, the same fabric, black suit, same material, feels sort of somewhere between silk and satin. This time double-breasted, and it does pop closed there and there. Is accurate to the production shots from the film. Moving down, I don't know if we can see his cufflinks. Because the shirt is so well tailored underneath the, you can just sort of see the sleeve under the jacket sleeve. It's hard to push it up to show you the cufflink, but it does have them on. Moving down again, nice trousers. Good cut for this era. Not too flared. And not too sort of drain pipe. So again, really nice. Moving across to Tommy, this is the one that's different. It is the sort of light grey or wolf grey, if you like. Again, you can see as the light catches it, the same material, sort of the silk or satin feel. Really, really well done. No loose threads hanging off, I will say, or none that I've seen. Again, the shirt, the collar styles are slightly different. This one and this one have sort of a more pointed, so it sort of covers the tie, where this one is a more standard shirt collar. Napkin in the upper, in the breast pocket, and then as you come down Tommy, you see that his bottoms, accurate to the film, because I've checked this, are slightly more flared than the other two. So I will say the suits are a right touch, and I wouldn't say it because, like I said, I've got no vested interest. I don't mind pissing this company off or the tailor off. If it was shit, I'd tell you it's shit. It's not. It's really good. Your fingers tell you everything you need to know. As soon as you pick them up out of the box, you know it's quality merch. So just believe that. So that is the strong point, and that alone would have got the figures a 5 out of 5 each on the outfits. The reason I've knocked them down is for a simple reason, and you probably know what it is before I even mention it. The shoes. I think that these shoes have been created from scratch. So I think they've been run off a sculpt and then painted, which, if I'm honest, gives them a very cheap look about them. There's no sock or no false sock inside, as you see there. So not very good. They look like something that Barbie's Ken would be wearing. Again on De Niro, same thing. No sock. Cheap looking shoe. So again, if the figures were mine, I owned them or keeping them, I would swap them out to the most accurate or the best quality looking shoes I could find. Worst offender here is Ray Liotta, because he has sort of a slip-on style shoe with a painted sock, but then they don't even put the rest of the sock round the ankle peg to make it look real. So if the trouser ain't in the perfect shape, or in the perfect place, should I say, it just looks very, very cheap. So I would swap the shoes out on all three figures, me personally. That's the only thing that brought the outfits down on the figures. So I am going to give all three of them a 4 out of 5. Rolling on to the bodies, or articulation as I would normally title it. Now, where I mentioned in one of the previous categories, I saw two problems with the figures. One were down to the outfit sitting too low on the shoulders and creating giraffe neck sometimes. The other one was always scale to me, because whenever I'd seen them posed together, the scales are off. To the human counterparts, the scales are off. And seeing it in hand, if you look at the feet, I've put the feet about the same distance apart, so they're as upright as each figure will go. The scale's off somewhere. Simply because if you look up and I get the line of the camera as flat as I can, you can see that De Niro is just a touch taller than Liotta. Now, it's wrong. If they're setting the scale by Tommy, I think the difference between Tommy and Jimmy is about right. Now, De Niro is quite a small actor. I think he's somewhere between 5'5", 5'6". I think Joe Pesci's even smaller than that. Liotta's got to be up round 5'11" to 6 foot, and the scale is off. As you can see, I'm resting the top of the screen on De Niro's head, and you can see that is undersized. So another thing, like I said before, there is certain things I would change if I own these figures. I would possibly swap out all three bodies, but I've got to give credit here. If you remember the Good, the Bad and the Ugly review that I did, I caned the bodies. Now, let me refresh your memory. I don't mind a third party body if it's tight enough to hold a pose and the lines look normal. If it's got a double bend elbow, if it needs one, I don't mind that. Now, if you watch that review closely, I actually caned the bodies simply because it had problems where the hands wouldn't fit right and Clint Eastwood's elbow were fucked. That is why I caned them bodies. Now, I think again these use the third party bodies, but it's really not a problem on these three figures other than the scale. I think a quick remedy would be to swap those out for some long ankle pegs, which would take Liotta up just enough taller than De Niro. So it should be Tommy's the smallest, then Jimmy, then Henry, but it is wrong. Now, everything else on the bodies is pretty positive. They move well, they're tight enough to hold the pose, they move freely. I don't feel like I'm cracking or breaking it, so I'm going to cut it some slack. The only other thing I've got to mention as far as the bodies are concerned is the cheap looking hands, and you knew I was going to pick them up. Some, and I will show you an hand that holds the cigarette of Robert De Niro's in a little bit, which is a nice touch. But like that, the hands, I said they're cheap because they've been painted, yet you can see the seam on the hand. So again, if you didn't swap out the bodies, because you might not need to on these, you would definitely want to swap the hands for the Hot Toys equivalent hands. That is a must, because you're always going to see the badly painted hands. So it's worth a mention. You pretty much knew I was going to get onto it. But like I said, when I cover the extras or the accessories in a minute, we'll see how well the hands hold the accessories, which I think if you're going to have an accessory, you've got to have an hand to hold it. So I will cover that when I get to it. But all in all, the bodies aren't total dog shit like they have been in past. So I am going to give them a 3 out of 5 on the body and the articulation. Rolling on to the extras and accessories. I will say I've not messed about with the posers too much. I've just displayed them with a couple of the accessories. So I'll show you the things. We'll talk about, come here, I'll keep it uniform. Do De Niro first. It does have an hand that will hold the cigarette, as you can see. So there is that. And then moving down, we have the hand that replay, the relaxed hand that was on. Another set of hands which probably came with the body. The pistol, as you see here. I'm assuming this is what came with each figure because this is how I received them packaged. I could be wrong, but this is what I think. The open Zippo style lighter, and then in here, as you can see, 2 tiny little replacement cuff links. I will show you the cuff links as well because you might see it now. As you can see on the shirt cuff. Yeah, nice touch. Henry has the sort of snub nose revolver. Now the problem, like I said, the hands, they're not a tight enough trigger hand. You put a pair of Han Solo hands on that, they look lovely because he's got a proper gun gripping hand. So that is what he would need. So like I said, these hands are cack. Got to be honest about that. But the pistol is a nice addition. Moving down, gets another set of the cheap plastic looking hands that probably came with the body. Replacement cufflinks again. The watch and the bracelet was boxed with his stuff, so I'm assuming that came with that. He also had the picture and the certificate in his box, so I'm assuming that were with that figure. And then obviously I haven't changed the pose on Tommy, but as we move down we see his mum's painting with this dog going this way and that dog going that way, and guy in boat saying, "What do you want from me?" So there's that. Another set of hands. and then in here some replacement cufflinks again. So not a massive amount of extra things. Other than additional outfits, I can't really think of anything else they would have wanted. Maybe a carving style knife for Tommy. But other than that, I can't really think of anything else they would want. All three came with stands. I'm assuming they was with the sets. Whether Tareek added those himself, I'm not sure. But there were stands in each of the box, so I'm assuming that was with it. So not a lot of stuff, and again, a little bit guilty of that. The guns not fitting the hands, so I picked up on that before. So on the extras, I'm going to give them all a 2 out of 5. Right, so onto the value, and then I'll sum it all up. Right, like I said at the beginning, Tareek is actually selling these figures, and the last price I saw through the Facebook group was £850 for the full set. Now, I don't know if that's price still stands, or if you want to talk to him and try and negotiate. I don't know. That was the last price I saw, and I think he actually said to me he's selling those at a loss. That might be the case, I don't know, because I didn't see the release price on these figures. Now, I also checked eBay, although it was only the UK version of eBay, and there weren't another set of these on there. No, sorry, tell a lie, there were another set, but they were £1,000 through eBay. So I think the price is round about what they're going for. I think Peter Kitch he sold a set a while back, but I didn't remember to ask him what he sold them for. Now, it is a lot for 3 figures, but if you work it out, it sort of works out to just under £280 per figure, which is, I don't know. To me, this is what I would say. If they were £200 each, I'd be very tempted to buy them myself, sticking with me other gangster stuff and have a bit of a shrine to the gangsters film I like. But it's sort of that bulk amount of paying, the bulk figure to pay for them all is just a little bit disheartening. You don't get a lot for your money, if I'm honest, but I do think you get the best sculpts of these characters on market so far. I will also say I think you're going to see copies of these sculpts painted by a third-party artist filtering through the community, which might bring the price of the original down, I'm not sure. But I would say, if you can afford it and you do love this film, it is a really, really nice set, and don't let the pictures put you off. Even the picture that they sent with the postcard, I don't think it does any of the figures any justice, because it makes Ray Liotta look surprised to fuck. The eyes aren't even painted like that on Tommy, and De Niro just don't look right. Yeah, if you look at them, if you start buzzing around the faces, you do realise that they're a lot better likenesses than you would think. So that's what I would say. On the value, I think you're pretty much paying a top price for that reason, because this is number 22 out of 14th world. So you either want that exclusive feel to what you're buying, or you want to buy more affordable figures and go for hot toys. That is your choice. But on value, I score on the value that I rate them at, and I think I would have said just under a 3, but I'll be generous and say I've given them a 3 out of 5. Like I've said, if you do want to talk to me about picking these figures up, you can do. If you want to go straight to Tareek, you can do. You can find him through my Facebook group. Like I said, the price is the price, but that's for you guys to sort out. Other than that, there's not much more I can say. Look out for my next review, which will probably be the Young Vito figure. But for now, this is Clipper King, and I'm out of here.